Sports with Sean Caravilles.
So after all the drama of Baku, it was a little bit more of a normal race, so to speak. Here's BBC 5 Live with a roundup of the Austrian Grand Prix.
5 Live Formula One.
Welcome to the Checkered Flag podcast at the end of the Austrian Grand Prix, round 9 of the 2017 Formula One World Championship. The rain just starting to fall here at Spielberg. If only it could have come a little bit sooner, it might have been slightly more exciting on track. Jack Nicholls, not the most scintillating of races, but it has spiced up the championship.
Yes, it wasn't the greatest race in the history of Formula One, admittedly. Valtteri Bottas taking the victory ahead of Sebastian Vettel in second, and then third place for Daniel Ricciardo. Hamilton just finishing outside the top three in fourth place with Kimi Räikkönen in fifth. Bottas took pole position, got a great start, led away from the front and disappeared off into the distance. It was quite a surprise, actually, that he was under pressure from Vettel right at the end of the Grand Prix, because he looked to have it all under control. Hamilton, meanwhile, put pressure on Daniel Ricciardo in the closing stages. A good recovery drive from Hamilton, having started 8th to finish in 4th position. But that's sort of it as far as story of the race goes. Victory for Valtteri Bottas.
We will hear from Lewis Hamilton on the way, of course we will, and also Daniel Ricciardo, who's just standing here getting loads of selfies with an umbrella being held over him and obviously no shoes on as he walks away from the media pen. And we'll also hear from Sebastian Vettel. But we should start off with our race winner, his second career victory, his first year at Mercedes, and he's really in this title fight.
It was like a perfect weekend, getting pole and win, so couldn't ask for more, so really pleased with that.
That start as well, just talk us through it, because a lot of people would question it, say, oh, you were just that little bit before you should have been, but it's been deemed fine. But how do you perfect that art?
You know, we do massive amounts of start practice, and also for the reaction time. And in practice, many times you can get kind of perfect starts, but then many times in the race situation, your brain tends to be more cautious. But this time I just went for it and managed to, have the perfect one. For sure, it is a little bit like playing with fire, because you can have jump start as well if you are too aggressive or if you try to estimate, too early. But it was just perfect, so that was good.
When it comes to the championship, obviously Silverstone is next, but do you feel like you can catch Lewis Hamilton, you can catch Sebastian Vettel?
Well, we're not even halfway of the year, so I believe, anything is still possible. And since the first race of the season, my target for this year has been to be in the championship fight and to try and win the title. So still in the fight.
So Jack, Valtteri Bottas still dreaming, and do you really feel like he could be a title contender, or that he is a title contender? The points difference is 20 between Vettel and Hamilton in second place, and then 15 between Hamilton and Bottas in third place.
He's still 35 points off the lead, isn't he? So it's still going to take something.
Good maths, by the way. Good maths.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. He's still going to take something for him to really climb back and start to hunt him down. But today was a good race again for Bottas, much like in Russia when he won his first Grand Prix. He was quicker than Lewis Hamilton in qualifying and in the race as well. So if he can keep that kind of performance up, yes. I think when it comes down to it, Lewis Hamilton is a quicker racing driver. But Bottas's consistency, maybe he can get up there. We saw last year Hamilton quicker driver than Rosberg. Rosberg won the championship. So Bottas isn't out of it, but if you were to ask me to put money on it, I wouldn't.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, I won't ask you in that case.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Talk about the start for me, Jack Nicholls, because you've watched a lot of motorsport in your time. Perfection when it comes to his start, or lucky that he managed to just get it in there in time? There was a question mark. Did he jump start? 0.2 seconds was the reaction time, wasn't it?
It was lucky. It was lucky. There's no doubt that he didn't react to the lights. He anticipated the lights, because he couldn't have seen the lights go off and that quickly he's away. You are, when you're starting a Grand Prix, right on the edge of your sort of, all your senses are heightened. You are staring at those lights, waiting for them to go, and sometimes you do anticipate it. And I think he just about got it right. Well, that's what the stewards decided anyway. They decided that it was okay, but it was, you know, right on the money. And thinking about it, I can't really remember the last time we had a jump start. It used to sort of happen all the time in the sort of 90s, but it doesn't really tend to happen anymore. I don't know if it's because of the way that the clutches are engaged and you're not sort of holding it on the clutch like you used to be if you had 3 pedals back in the day, or what it is, but it's not really something we tend to see much of anymore. But Vettel straight away was convinced that Bottas had jumped the start, but and as soon as you saw it watching the live pictures, it was, wow, that was an incredible start. Was that a jump start? But you know, the stewards decided that it wasn't, and that's what helped Bottas into the lead and saw him disappear up the road.
Jack, what can we read into Vettel getting on his radio and saying to Charlie Whiting, which he's saying it to his team, but clearly, actually, he's saying it to Charlie Whiting, the race director. Come on, you guys, he jump-started. Some people have accused him of kind of ratting him in a little bit of a school childish way.
Oh, well, that's nonsense. I don't want to offend anyone who said that, but that's just nonsense, isn't it? I mean, you know, if you get fouled in football in the penalty area, you appeal to the referee for a penalty. If you think something's out in tennis at Wimbledon, you refer it to the Hawkeye or the video referral system. You appeal for everything that you think has gone against you. You might be right, you might be wrong, but you've got to raise the question. I don't think. You know, if Bottas had broken the rules and jumped the start, i.e. started the race before everybody else, then I think you're quite right to complain. I don't think it's Vettel's position to go, I think he started the race before anyone else. Oh well, I'm a chivalrous man, I won't mention it. That's ridiculous.
Okay, I'm glad you cleared up that viewpoint so succinctly. Thank you for that. Let's hear from Sebastian Vettel on that start.
Well, it's done now, so I don't think there's much point talking about it. Not that easy to pass here, but he was very quick in the first stint. Second stint, it was the other way. I think it was the other way around. Obviously, he struggled a bit with his tyres, but overall, it was very close. There wasn't much missing at the end.
Is Valtteri a title challenger in your mind now too?
Well, I think he always has been. He's in one of the quickest cars. He's one of the quickest drivers, so obviously he's been a bit underrated, I think, in his Williams years, just because the car wasn't as good, but he did a great job, and he's giving a hard time to Lewis, who is well respected for a lot of reasons. The more, I think, drivers are at the front, the better it is for all of us.
Sebastian, consistency is so important when it comes to winning a championship, and at the moment your form and consistency is far better than your main title rival of Lewis Hamilton. Do you just have to keep that going and have to be concentrated on that?
Well, I don't know. I think it's a moment. It's you look at the moment, but still a long way to go. I think our aim at the moment is to win races. We've come close a couple of times this year. We've succeeded a couple of times this year. So, yeah, I think if it's that close, you always look what you could have done a bit differently. But overall, for sure, it's been a good weekend. But, yeah, I would have loved to be probably a second up the road.
Next up, it's Silverstone, the British Grand Prix. Is there something sort of more satisfying about winning in your rival's backyard than in anywhere else?
I don't look at it that way. I think it's a great pleasure if you are, allowed or able to race in your home country. Obviously, not for us or not for me this year, but overall, I think Silverstone is the home of motor racing. There's a lot of history in that place. It's a great track, especially the old parts. It's a lot of fun. The car, I think this year is really good and should suit Silverstone, so we'll see when we get there.
Well, that was Sebastian Vettel. Now, we've just been joined by Chief F1 writer Andrew Benson, and he's just come out of speaking to or hearing from Lewis Hamilton. Now, we will hear from Lewis Hamilton when I spoke to him, which was immediately after the race. He's had a little time, I suppose, to consider what he wants to say to the written media. And Andrew, was he in a better mood than when he spoke to us, where he was just a bit sulky and grumpy?
Well, it's funny you should bring that up, because he's actually addressed that in quite an eloquent bit of speech at the end of the news conference. I think he was referring to the way he'd responded after qualifying yesterday, but now you've mentioned what he's been saying to you in the TV and radio pen, maybe he was talking about that too. He was saying, look, you can't expect us to be happy all the time. Us drivers, you've got to be patient with us. We put so much effort into this, have so much hope and expectation invested in it, and if it doesn't go the way we want it, certain days we're going to be, and he used a rude word, and you can see his point. He said, holistically looking at the championship picture, he's 20 points behind now. It doesn't look great right now, but obviously it can all turn around in one weekend. Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team boss, pointed out a little earlier in his news conference that Lewis has had a lot of bad luck recently. He's had some difficult weekends. He had the headrest thing in Baku, lost the win because of that. He's had the gearbox penalty here in Austria, and he's due that luck to turn around, whereas the others haven't had that bad luck yet. So there's 11 races to go still. Let's see what happens. But he's down right now, definitely. But he'll be absolutely up for Silverstone next weekend. You can be sure of that.
Well, let's hear from him.
It's obviously been a difficult weekend, and well, I don't really know what to say. I've had a few weekends like this, so it's not new to me.
Does the consistency of this championship battle worry us all? Because everybody always says, consistency is key to it. Is that something on the back of your mind?
I mean, it's not going great at the moment, but there's a long way to go. There's still so many races, so we're falling further behind this weekend. So every step ahead, it's like 5 places back. So just got to keep battling and hope it gets better. I won't give up.
You'll certainly have a lot of support when you go to the home Grand Prix. I know it's just a matter of days until you can get some support from the fans, and that will buoy you, won't it?
It definitely will. I'm looking forward to getting there and hope that we can use that as a springboard to get some better results from then on. A lot of pressure going into it, and this has obviously been a difficult weekend, so I will try and get past this in the next couple of days and then move forward.
Andrew, we've spoken and heard from Sebastian Vettel about consistency. Lewis Hamilton must have it on his mind that he, and I think this is fair to say, lost last year's World Championship because of reliability issues. Is he worried now at this point, race 9 of the season, almost halfway through, he could be losing his grip on this championship because of reliability issues again?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think he is worried that he's losing his grip a little bit at the moment, and he does definitely need to get some points back on Vettel and to do it quickly. Having said that, just on the subject of last year, very briefly, it wasn't just reliability. Obviously, he would have won the championship had the reliability gone more his way, had it been evenly split between him and Nico Rosberg. But he also had himself to look at. He had a couple of bad weekends in Baku and Singapore, and he had a couple of bad starts as well, which he didn't have at the end of the season when he'd actually put more effort into looking into how he should do his starts better. This year is a kind of similar pattern in a way. He's had a very difficult weekend in Russia where Bottas won. He had a difficult weekend in Monaco where Bottas was 4th, I believe, but Lewis finished 7th, if I remember rightly. And now, when he was quickest in practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, and in Q1 and in Q2, he was 3rd only in Q3 when it mattered, and so that meant he started 8th rather than 6th. Now, I actually specifically asked him about that in the press conference, and he said it didn't matter, but actually he also pointed out earlier, it didn't matter now, at the end of the race, because he got the best result he could, but he'd also pointed out earlier that by the time he got past Grosjean and Perez, which were the 2 people he were behind who he probably shouldn't have been behind, he'd lost 16 seconds already, and he was only 6 seconds behind Bottas at the end of the race. So it did matter, actually. Now, there's an excuse for why he didn't perform in Q3. He did use a different set of tyres in Q2 from everybody else. That changes the balance of the car, and so when he got back into Q3, he wasn't ready for it. He didn't have the preparation time that the others had. Nevertheless, whatever the reasons, that's 3 weekends out of 9 this year where he hasn't quite performed at his very, very high level of best when he perhaps ought to have done. And when you're competing against Sebastian Vettel in a Ferrari that's this good, you can't afford to have too many more weekends like that. And I think that's the main thing he has to work on. He can't control the reliability of the car, but he can control his own performances, and he's got to be absolutely at his best from now on.
It was an interesting one in qualifying yesterday because, Alan McNish reckoned that it's not really going to make much difference if you do a lap on the super softs and then go on to the ultra softs in Q3, but it obviously did. And yeah, we haven't had Vettel. We haven't seen Vettel have an off day, I don't think. I mean, maybe Andrew can think of one, but I can't think of an example this season where Vettel has had an off day. It's that consistency. Hamilton, the last 6 races, 2 of them he's won, 4 of them he hasn't been on the podium in what is the quickest, or at least second quickest car out there. And it's all different reasons, and it's all sort of excusable, but it has to change, I think, if he wants to win the championship, whereas Vettel is just getting on with the job.
Yeah, Vettel getting on with the job, absolutely. I think his worst qualifying is 4th last time out in Baku, and that's as bad as it gets. Andrew, just looking at the rest of the field, is there anybody else that can stand in the way of this championship battle, do you feel?
Well, Hamilton was just talking about the pace of the Red Bull in the race today. He played down the tyre issues that we all heard him talking about on the radio in his news conference just now. He was saying he was pushing really hard, and Daniel Ricciardo had some really good pace, and it was only a mistake at the end that allowed him to really get into that position to attack on the penultimate lap. Red Bull have been inching closer over the last few races after a big aerodynamic upgrade in the Spanish Grand Prix at the beginning of May. They're still down on power on the engine, but whether they can play a consistent part in the championship is a different question. But I think they're getting into a position now where they're close enough to be starting to impact on it from time to time. And next weekend in Silverstone is exactly the sort of race where that car could again be, a little bit closer perhaps to the battle at the front. Ricciardo and Verstappen qualified very close behind Kimi Raikkonen in the second Ferrari here in Austria this weekend. Silverstone should favour them more. So they're not in the championship picture, but they're getting close to a position where they could start to impact the championship picture.
Well, Daniel Ricciardo gave it all he could and all he had to at the end, as Hamilton, as you say, was bearing down on him. Let's hear from the Australian.
It's good relief for sure to get the result here in Austria for the team and everyone. It's great. I saw Max was off on lap 1. I'm still not 100% sure what happened. I believe something to do with the start. So again, it would be nice to get obviously two cars up there, but for sure for now I got to be happy with myself and what I'm doing, and thanks to the team for getting it right from at least my side.
So you've heard from the top 3 and Lewis Hamilton. Going forward, Max Verstappen, we have to talk about him a little bit because his reliability woes continue. He said he had a clutch problem, which led for him to be in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah, he's having a rough time. That's a lot of retiments for him now. You've got your little book there, Jenny. How many is it? 5, is it?
5 out of 9.
And it's 5 in the last 7 as well.
He's been doing a great job this season. It's 5-4 between him and Ricciardo in qualifying, but Ricciardo's having the rub of the green in terms of race reliability at the moment. I'm sure Verstappen will be scoring some good results soon, but Red Bull do have to get on top of their reliability issues. And that first corner accident, what can you say? Danny Kvyat just got it completely wrong, didn't he?
Yeah, in the other junior Red Bull team, so slightly awkward, isn't it? Jack, as you so rightly chirped in there, retirements 5 from the last 7 races.
Yeah, exactly. 5 from 9 is bad enough, but then it's 5 from the last 7 races that Max Verstappen has retired in. And in the meantime, Daniel Ricciardo is doing a stellar job. I don't think you can overemphasize what a good job he's been doing. And Verstappen will argue, yes, he should have been there. If he was in the race, he'd be getting these good results as well. But I think Ricciardo's doing an exceptional job and, proving his obviously undeniable talent. But it's really nice to see him doing well. And I think, I can't remember off the top of my head how close they finished to, but there was something like 15 seconds off the win today, something like that. Whereas you think back to Barcelona, China earlier in the year, they were 45 seconds, a minute away from the winning car. So, and there were no safety cars today or anything like that. So they really are making progress, Red Bull, which is good to see because you want 3 teams up at the front battling. The Ferrari, Mercedes is all very good, but to add in Red Bull as well would be tremendous.
Yeah, and for them to do it around this circuit as well, their home track, they haven't had much joy here. Year upon year, they've kind of limped their way around. And I think it was Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull, that said trying to get on the podium would be like a fairy tale for them here. And they managed it by the skin of their teeth, but they did manage it, so that's positive. Jack, who else stood out for you today?
Williams, actually. They had a totally horrible day yesterday. They qualified 16th and 17th, but then they ended up finishing both in the points. Lance Stroll completing the top 10, just ahead of Jolyon Palmer, who did a good job, actually. I think it's worth saying that Jolyon Palmer did a good job after his struggles, certainly in the first half of the year, finished ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, so that'll do his confidence the world of good going to Silverstone. But Williams, they did a slightly different tyre strategy, but they were happy with, Paddy Lowe said yesterday after qualifying, they're happy with the race pace, but just over one lap they were nowhere. So it was nice to see them recover in their 40th year and ahead of their movie premiere on Tuesday.
Well, next up it is Silverstone, the British Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel said today it's the home, the heartland of Formula One, but it might not be on the calendar for very much longer. Andrew, do we have any update after the whole, they might try and renegotiate the contract after 2019?
Oh gosh, how long have you got? Not very long, I know.
Not very long at all.
Yes, it's become a bit public, unfortunately. I'm pretty confident that Silverstone will, at the beginning of this week, exercise their contractual option to pull out of the race at the end of after the 2019 edition, so still 2 more British Grand Prix after this year. Their hope is that they can renegotiate the contract on better financial terms, but the argument's gone public. Some information about an offer that Liberty, the Formula 1 owners, made to Silverstone was leaked to the Reuters news agency. I was then leaked some information from the other side to sort of back that back at Liberty from Silverstone. You can read about that on the BBC Sport website. It's still up there. So Chase Carey said to you, Jenny, this weekend that he doesn't want the argument to be done in public, but it's already become a little bit public. It all needs to calm down a little bit. I think realistically there'll be, if I had to speculate, I would say there will be a British Grand Prix after 2019 and it will be at Silverstone. But Liberty are definitely playing hardball. They're looking at other options, potentially a race in London Docklands, however improbable that might seem to people on financial and all sorts of other bases. But Silverstone's really their best option. Carey did even admit that to you, Jenny, didn't he? But I'm afraid for everyone who's been bored of the Silverstone and the British Grand Prix story for the last 20 years or however long it's been going on, there's still a few more years of it to go.
You can hear more from Chase Carey in that interview that Andrew was alluding to on Thursday night in our preview show ahead of the British Grand Prix. Lots more coverage to come, of course, over the next week. Can I just get your driver of the day, please? We'll start with you, if you can, Jack.
I'm going to go for Daniel Ricciardo. Tremendous performance again. 5 podiums in a row. The only driver to have done that in the last 5 Grand Prix.
Wow, Daniel Ricciardo, look at you. Andrew?
I'll go for Bottas. He controlled the race brilliantly from the front after an absolutely stupendous start. 0.201 seconds reaction time, and it was made to look better by the fact that Vettel had a pretty average start beside him. But great start, several lengths in front up the hill, and controlled the race from there. A lot of pressure in the last few laps. Great